had a friend who was kind of like my bodyguard then. And he says, hey, I got a friend from New Orleans that wants to buy some Coke. And so I sell him some Coke. Well, that happened to be a federal narcotic agent.
Your business savvy was not quite as honed.
My clarity wasn't very good with the diction glasses on. So I'm a little Mr. Miami Vice. Brittany's too young for this show, but there used to be a show.
I know about it though.
Okay, Brittany knows about it. I'm thinking I'm a cool Miami Vice with my 1973 Capri. And I'm going to make this big deal. Thank God, before the deal went through, they made the arrest, and they arrested like 18 of us. I would be dead today.
Only the likes of us would say something, man, getting arrested was the best thing that...
Yeah, our legal system has a huge responsibility.
Hi there, and welcome to the Recovery Crew here at Deep Waters Recovery. I'm Dr. Bob Baer, and our co-host today is Brittany Bass. She's a lot of fun. She's been on here before. You guys know who I'm talking about. So we're going to have fun today interviewing our guest, George Joseph. So any of you who have paid attention to the healing world and the addiction world over the past 20 years or so have heard of George, or at least you know of many of the little empires that he has built to help so many people. And he's always got a hand out to help anybody that's ready to do the work. So he also has a really juicy story. He looks really good, but he also has a very juicy story that got him here, right? We all have our dark past, and it also becomes our biggest gift. And he has found a way to give it to the world in such a good way. So grateful we snagged him. Here at Deep Waters, we are most interested in helping people transform dependency and trauma in all its forms, by the way, not just abuse. Most of us have things underneath the surface of us that's keeping us from living that full life. So we're also interested in helping people live that creative, blissful, authentic life that we all long for. This life is short. I don't know if anybody mentioned that to you, but it's pretty short, and we might as well live it. Yeah. All right. So thanks so much for joining us. Like, share, subscribe, get involved with this community of healing. So welcome. You're in the deep waters now. Okay, there's a couple of people that I like. You see, I like doing this podcast with people that I like. So here we are. Here is Brittany Bass, who is our co-host for the Recovery Crew today. Welcome, Brittany.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And Brittany is a superstar person in recovery who has been a guest on the Recovery Crew before, and now she's a Recovery Crew alumni and has agreed to be a co-host, a guest co-host. And our guest today is George Joseph. If you are anywhere in the world that you have any contact with the addiction industry, the healing industry, you've heard of this guy because he's built several empires. But only, and I know you, George, and I know you've done it just from your heart because you know the world needs it, and that's why it works so well, right? So this is George Joseph. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. Hello, Brittany.
Hi.
So the program manager of Deep Waters Recovery is Nicole Chargois, and I think she's here with us right now. She's going to give just a brief information about how to get a hold of us. There you are.
Yeah, Deep Waters Recovery is an advanced recovery and healing experience for men and women. We have group programming focused on trauma resolution, second stage recovery. If you want any more information about our program or about this podcast, you can reach us at deepwatersrecovery.com. And feel free to give me a call. Our direct number is 512-677-7847. Again, that's 512-677-7847. We post weekly blogs from our community. Our podcast comes out weekly, and you can follow us on all the social media sites, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And you can also email us at admin@deepwatersrecovery.com. And if you're looking for individual therapy or a weekly men's group, something like that, Dr. Bob also has availability. So again, our number is 512-677-7847.
Nice.
Nice.
Thank you.
Nicole has the best name in the world. I love your name, Nicole.
You got to say it. Go ahead and say
Say
it.
it loud as you can.
Chagua.
Chagua.
It's
Chagua.
fun to say.
Yes.
Nice. And actually, Nicole is a brilliant healer as well as she is organized. Have you heard of such a combination as
We
that?
love those people. Guys like us need people like us need people like you for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Glad to do it.
Okay, so we're going to start this thing. We have George Joseph as a guest today. He's going to tell his story. And, just a little bit about George. George he'll tell a little bit more about the genesis of his crash and burn, the crash and burn, and then the phoenix out of the fire. But part of what came up out of the fire is those of you that are in this industry or even in the recovery world have heard of the right step. There are that a lot of. I just found out that our co-host maybe might say something at some point about having visited that place in maybe more than once.
Maybe more than once, yeah.
And it takes what it takes. And the right step is available for in my experience. If you want to go there, maybe even if you don't have, even if you're not extraordinarily wealthy to be able to pay for overpriced. George has found a way to get people in that and to get this thing so that they can get their life back. Right. That's the reputation. And the right step is probably one of the most successful treatment programs that has ever that there's ever been. And the Spirit Lodge is what I remember. That got transformed into several other things, but it's about to emerge out of the earth again, I'm told. Maybe we'll hear a little bit more about that. George also is the founder and CEO of Positive Recovery, which it's based on the very best of positive psychology concepts. Doing really good work, and he's also the CEO and founder of I don't know if you're still CEO, but of Lightning Step, which is electronic medical records. It's very boring if you don't care about that shit, but he has designed it so it's so easy to use. So people like Brittany and I that have to use that stuff all the time say, "Thank you, George. Thank you."
That's the goal for sure.
That's right. And also, just because he got bored with all this addiction stuff, he started this other empire called Common Bond coffee shops. And actually, I've been there. There's there's something going on in those places, George. I don't know what it is. Maybe you can speak to that, but it has a different vibe for sure.
Thank you.
So, anyway, George Joseph, good man, just a good business guy, but just a good heart. The combination of good business guy and really good vulnerable heart. You don't always find those guys. So anyway, glad you're here. So why don't you just launch into what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now, brother?
Sure, I'd be glad to. So thank you for that great introduction, and I'm excited to be here. I was the youngest of 6 children in South Louisiana, and so I was probably pretty destined to be an alcoholic for sure. And I was 5 years after everyone else, so a good Catholic family. I think I was a mistake, but I'm glad they made that mistake. And I had a fairly good childhood. My first addiction was probably sports and basketball, and just loved life, and things were great. And a lot of my siblings were moving on, so in some ways I was starting to eventually become like an only child. And but small town, 2,500 people, right on the bayou. Things were good, and it started to change for me. Little things, like these unmanageabilities that pop up. I broke my leg playing football when I was 12, I was in 8th grade, whatever. No, wait, I'm sorry. I backtrack. First unmanageability was my dad died when I was 12. And the way I found out about it was at the Catholic Church. So I get up, and my dad was cutting the grass, and he wasn't feeling well. I went and talked to him, and they were like, "No, you and my brother and I were going to church." And it was close enough where I walked, and my brother drove because we didn't get along the greatest. And during the mass, the priest came in and announced that my dad died. And so when you're 12 years old, talk about trauma, you're 12 years old and you're just like, what the freak? I didn't even know what to do. And luckily my brother was a couple pews behind and had somebody tap me on the shoulder and said, give me the mark to get out. And so I left and we went home and everybody's obviously crying and all that stuff. And so it's been a long journey to deal with that grief, including a warrior, which is where I met Dr. Bob, men's weekend. And so I don't say that was the reason I'm addicted. I just said that was part of my story, is the death. And then not long after that, I broke my leg playing football. And for someone who's addicted to sports and you break your leg and you can't play, it's probably as much grief as anything as not to say as much as my dad's death, but again, grief, double grief.
Yeah. And
then like all good addicts, the doctor says, wait a year before you do any sports again. And I went play again, the coaches and everybody's like, yeah, come on, let's play. It was flag football during spring practice. And I went up for a pass and got hit and broke my leg again. And back then you were in traction in the hospital for 6 weeks each time. And I just remember later in my story, you'll hear this, but in those times, the visitors and the cards and the love was so strong because I wasn't into the addiction phase per se yet. And then later in life, when the addiction comes in and I was in a hospital, no cards, no visitors. And that's just part of that stream of addiction pain that you'll feel in that sense. But break my leg again. And then Mardi Gras comes around somewhere in that. It gets fuzzy. The older you get, the dates get a little fuzzy. But the first time I had a joint, it made Mardi Gras just so amazing, jumping around. And, you're 12 or 13 years old. I think I was 13 years old at the time. And jumping around for Mardi Gras and having fun and just experiencing that. And then my mom was working 11 to 7. So I learned to get into the liquor cabinet. Everybody has a liquor cabinet in Louisiana, and started dabbling in the liquor cabinet when she was going to work. And then, who knew that I had the genetic predisposition to become alcoholic addict pretty quickly. My grandfather had a bar called the Inferno Room. And he gave it to my uncles who ran it until it burned down. And so in Golden Meadow, Louisiana, so it's an Inferno Room burns down. It's a true bar. And drinking with him was pretty cool. Rest his soul. And just the addiction started, and then to support my habit, I started dealing drugs in high school. And after my senior year, I think it was, or during my senior year, I got in another bad car wreck. That's what I want to say, and had 3 vertebrates messed up. And so I was in the hospital in New Orleans quite a bit, and have 2 rods in my back, and have had 5 back surgeries since then. And some of them have been in sobriety. But those experiences, we were wasted in driving in a car. It's called the Sauce Piquant Festival, which is a turtle soup. It's a French name for turtle soup. And we were at Quaaludes and drinking, and the guy who was driving was the wealthiest guy's family in town. So they had the cars, but he was the worst driver. So in hindsight, we shouldn't have let him drive, period. And we passed up a friend's house to go pick him up. And when we turned around, coming back, the road curved, and he just decided to go straight and hit a ditch and curve and flipped over. And, it was really a bad scene, and just getting trapped in a car, and you smell gas, and you say that could be a good reason to get sober. Not really, but it was just the way you live life. It was starting to become that life of survival. And being in the hospital, again, like difference than when I broke my leg, hardly no visitors except, my mom and family members, and no cards. And you just, as I became in that addiction road, you get, your friends are your friends. And if you're talking to them, they're like, oh, I love you. You're my brother, when you're wasted. But when it's time to show up for somebody from emotional support, usually when addiction's going on, those people hide like roaches, man.
Yeah.
They
There's no
just
high,
run,
because you can't get high from that.
Yeah. Yeah, when you're hiding, I think you don't want to be exposed and come and, go out of your way to show compassion.
That's right. And also along the way in our addiction, we push the people away that could love us, right?
Yes, exactly. You don't want those people around. So I was in that mode and in those times, and even in the surgery, they say, hey, you need to stay 6 months or periods of times where I couldn't do much, big old back brace. And so one of the times of the surgeries, I said, I'm gonna get sober. I'm not gonna do any drugs. I'm only gonna drink long neck Dixie beer. That was what I thought sobriety was, just to cut back on some things. And
Nice.
I remember it, not looking back, even though I was 17, 18 years old, I was totally a dry drunk. It was me and my mom. And I just remember, poor thing, she's 94, I think now, and how mean I was to her, because it wasn't that I was wanting to be mean, but it's because I wasn't getting my fix. And I was a dry drunk, so I was angry. And even though I couldn't do things, I was just taking it out on her. And so I definitely made some serious amends to her about that. So I'm just trying to stay sober. So I started getting out where I'll go around my friends and they want to pass me the joint. And I'm like, no, I'm staying sober. I'm not doing drugs. And then next thing you know, they're like, no, nobody will know. Then I grab it and then it just starts again. So I didn't have any treatment. I didn't have any help, support. So that was how I could not stay sober. It was impossible to stay sober, even though I thought it was.
And that's an advanced idea right there, George. To you and I and Brittany, we know this. We teach it all the time, that once we become a pickle, once we've gone over that line, there's no going back. But it's not common knowledge in the culture.
Yeah.
The cutting back idea is like, makes sense.
For a non-alcoholic.
That's right. But for us, we know better. And that's why we're doing this podcast, because this is educational. I mean, look at this superstar in front of us right here. There was a time in his life, there was a time in your life, brother, when you were absolutely powerless over making your life work.
Yeah. It was just part of it. And so that lifestyle, I really believe when you stop, you disease progresses. Even though when you stop, or at least I was attempting to stop, it got even worse, more rapidly. And I remember times being drunk and wasted and, fall down and people would drop me off at home to change clothes, and then they wouldn't wait. They would take off, and I had to come in and stagger in and tell my mom I'm okay. And, I just wanted to change. I got dirty or whatever. I just remember all those little incidences of addiction.
Sorry to interrupt. I can't help myself. But it's my idea on why that progression of the disease happens. The disease thinks it's helping us.
Yeah.
Because it did at one time. It was our solution, right? Yeah. And when we're not using, the disease is scrambling to get control to try to help us again, and it progresses.
I love that. That's a great example. That's absolutely. I heard that at a AA convention one time, and it made such sense. Is that the more you stop, the faster it grows, and it's trying to catch up. And so when you go back, it's beyond where you would have been even.
That's right.
And so I'm trying to live life. I'm starting to deal drugs throughout this period of time and dealing cocaine. And so I had a friend who was kind of like my bodyguard then. And he says, hey, I got a friend from New Orleans that wants to buy some coke. And so I sell him some coke. Well, that happened to be a federal narcotic agent.
Your business savvy was not quite as honed at that time.
I was a little confused. My clarity wasn't very good with the addiction glasses on. And so I sold it to them, and they don't just sell you and, get you, handcuff you right then. They play you out. So I sold him a gram, and then he wanted to buy like a half ounce. And so I'm a little Mr. Miami Vice. Brittany's too young for this show, but there used to be a show.
I know about it though.
Okay, Brittany knows about it. So Miami Vice, I'm thinking I'm a cool Miami Vice with my 1973 Capri, and I'm going to make this big deal with this guy. And luckily, thank God, before the deal went through, they made the arrest, and they arrested like 18 of us. And that was saved my life. People think about the negative things that affect your life. That getting arrested saved my life. Absolutely. I would be dead today.
only the likes of us would say something. Man, getting arrested was the best thing. There was a guy in a meeting one time that told me he threw a brick through a window and broke because he did not know how to stop.
Yeah.
He just needed.
Wow.
He got arrested on purpose.
Yeah, our legal system has a huge responsibility because they can influence how people or change their lives being arrested.
Yep.
And for me, it was based on getting arrested, having a lawyer who knew about a rehab center in Baton Rouge. Those three things. If that guy wouldn't have known about the rehab center, I would have probably got my arrest, did my time, and not gotten the treatment. But it was that combination of those two things where arrested and told about treatment. And so he tells me about treatment. He said, look, they got you. Best thing to do is go to this treatment. I had no idea what it was about. I said, well, give me a week. And in that week, I never thought I was suicidal, but I was suicidal because I drank and drugged like there was no tomorrow because I was 18 years old, probably 120 pounds, and I was scared to death about, prison. Back in 81, distribution of cocaine was a pretty serious offense. Now it's probably a misdemeanor, but back then it was pretty serious. No. And, I'm facing this jail time and I'm immature emotionally because like they say, when you start drugs, your emotions stop. And so I'm probably 13 years old and in an 18-year-old body and I'm facing prison. And so I'm frightened to death. And basically he recommends this treatment and I gladly go because it's not to get treatment. It was to get the rap beat.
Right.
And I go to treatment and I'm in detox for days, like 2 or 3 days. Like I'm sleeping and they're like trying to get me to go to rehab, go to do the groups. And they finally come in one day and this was an adolescent treatment center in Baton Rouge. So it was so cool. It was in a locked facility for they call it the detox phase. And so they came to get me out and I'm like, no, I don't want to go. I don't want to go to any meetings. And they came and they said, we're going to take your cigarettes away. I'm like, I don't even smoke cigarettes, so sure. And then one time there was like 8 of them come in there like they're going to, intimidate me to get out. But physically, I was just worn out. I mean, that week, I just, like I said, I gave up. And so, I gave up. And then, the bottom line is that the treatment is a program of attraction, not promotion. The rehab center was fun. I thought it was cool because it was like 40, 50 kids. And back then they had people from all over the country there. And I had a girlfriend in there. And so this was like really cool place, And the worst thing about it was you had to memorize the steps to go to your room to use the bathroom. So I didn't know much about recovery, but I knew how to recite some of the 12 steps. And then so I'm in treatment.
Wait a minute. That just kind of went over. I had a girlfriend in there.
Yeah, we had girlfriends. It was cool, man. People wrote in your big book. It was like fun times.
I had a treatment boyfriend.
Yeah, it's not good to have them, but
it's not good. No.
Yes, they never work out. I've seen some of them actually get married, and usually the marriage doesn't work out, but it distracts you from your treatment. So
we're not necessarily recommending that shit, right?
Yeah, we don't recommend it. Sorry, I don't want to say that I recommend it. I just did it.
It's true. That's why we have the last resort.
The last resort's all men, right?
All men, yeah. It's better to have all men, all women.
For now, I bug Corbin at least once a quarter about how we need a female program, but that's not here nor there.
I think in the beginning of treatment, you can have male, female, because you're still just waking up. But in the next level of treatment, the sober living or the extended care, it definitely has to be gender specific because you'll get so distracted. Yep. So distracted. So she was just a distraction. It's funny. I remember her name, Lori. I mean, I'm 18, just turned 19 years old.
Still distracting him, Brittany.
I even know her last name. I mean, it's funny how that works, And so we had all kind of little relationships. I'll tell you a quick treatment story, even though I'm making fun of my treatment center. So I was put on a no female contract, right? And so I'm in there and I'm not supposed to talk to the girls or whatever. But the last weekend I'm in treatment, I tell everybody I'm off the contract, which is not true at all. And everybody plays along. So they're talking to me and all this stuff. And so we go to group on Monday and my counselor was this drop dead gorgeous woman, but ball buster. And so she says, so let me get this straight. You took yourself off this contract that I put you on. And I'm like, yes, it was my last weekend. She says, you think you're above the group. I want you to stand on this chair like you're above us. And so I'm standing on a chair, and she's having every group member share their, feelings. And so we're going around the room, and there's a girl named Stephanie that's got no male contraction. So she's like, I'm so pissed off that you did this and all this stuff. And then the next person like sharing the concerns. And then there's a new guy who's like maybe a couple days into treatment. And he says, well, under the circumstances, I would have done the same thing. So she puts him on a chair. Don't you know, he and I have been friends since 1981. He's been sober the whole time, and I've been sober the whole time. We were above us. Everybody, we were looking at each other, smiling, laughing. And we went back to see the counselor later, and she said, that was one of my biggest mistakes, putting both of y'all in the chairs, because I totally lost control of the group.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So I love it. Treatment is a great experience if you're willing and open and honest, because you get to be around people of your own makeup and thinking. And the counselors are all mostly been there, and so they can kind of guide us. And I think probably that's why I ended up in the treatment world. I just love that experience.
And the thing that we don't do in our active addiction is let our real true selves come forward, right? And when we're in treatment, there's like that situation right there. You got, a little bit of a the grandiosity of George Joseph got to come to the surface, and you get to own it, right? I mean, you can almost have fun with it when you're in a safe, well-facilitated program.
Yeah, I mean, actually, they had treatments, AA coming in, and I remember one time just laughing so hard that we got kicked out of AA. I mean, it's just, I made amends to those guys who came in to volunteer, because I became friends with them, and just said, man, I'm sorry. I just, when you're young in sobriety, and you, like you said, you're coming back to life, and I just got several of us just couldn't stop laughing. So because I didn't laugh for a lot for those 6-7 years I was using. So I'm in rehab, and then the day before Thanksgiving, God, it's bringing up some memories now, because I just had my sobriety birthday. The day before Thanksgiving, I had to go to court, and I went to Thibodaux, Louisiana, and I'm in court all morning, and there's cases going by, and there's this old coon ass that they say, you got to go to 90 meetings in 90 days. And he's like, me, I'm not going to go to them damn meetings. So I'm just laughing. I'm like, oh shit, I don't want to go to, it doesn't sound like it's too appealing, these Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. Yeah. And then we go to lunch. And then after lunch, I'm the only one in the courtroom. And I got really even more afraid. And so they bring you into this room and say, look, if you help us get your contact, your dealer, we can be lighter on you. Otherwise, you're going to Angola, which is this Louisiana State prison. And so I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll help you. And so this was the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I tell my family, I don't want to go to back to rehab until everybody's asleep. I don't want to go before that. And so they drop me off at like 10 o'clock at night, and I go into rehab. And the next day, Thanksgiving Day, which this is rare now, Jay, my counselor, happened to be working that day, and she got me in the office and just started talking to me and put a lot of sense into me. She said, if you go and help them, you're going to be back in that lifestyle, and you're going to not stay sober. You really need to go to the Sober Living Center and go for 6 months. And man, she was such a godsend, because I said, absolutely, I will not take that chance. I want to go to rehab, because at that time is probably 4 weeks into my treatment. And so I was starting to wake up a little bit and make good decisions. And so I said, all right, I'll go to my rehab center, my sober living. And I went there for 6 months. Yeah. And it helped. Another thing that helped save my life. I mean, the more you can be in treatment and early recovery, the more structure, the more you can build a foundation. I was so blessed. 6 weeks of treatment, 6 months of that. I called it halfway house back then, but sober living, they call it now. 6 months there.
Yeah, and anybody that's listening to this that is like needing help, this is probably not great news. Yeah. It's going to take 9 months or a year of adult supervised lifestyle. Yeah, to have a chance if we've gone over that line. So it's really not great information. Just go to treatment, and then
one day at a time, man.
We'll talk about it later.
Yeah, you take it one day, one step at a time, because I wouldn't have done it. Yeah, it doesn't sound appealing going up front, but from the back end, it was so critical for me to do that and experience that. And the other thing I learned while I was in treatment, and this is another, you get these little gems of life. And so I'm there, and one of the counselors is getting married, and this is in Thibodaux, Louisiana. He's getting married to a local person. He's from Minnesota, and we called ourselves brothers in the program. And they had a camcorder, and back then the camcorders were big, so it was getting passed around. And when it came to me, I didn't want to let it go, because it was like my crutch, right? Used to having drugs and alcohol in a social situation, but this one now I don't have any drugs or alcohol, and it's a social situation. It's a wedding, and it's a reception. There's drinking going on, all that stuff. And so somewhere through that reception, they had us come and sing Proud Mary with the band. And I can't sing for anything, but the fact of singing and seeing the people laughing and having fun and realizing they wouldn't care about me, what I'm doing. Everybody's in their own little world, and they just want to have fun. So that was my first true experience, to put down the camcorder, let go of the crutch, and realize I could have fun in sobriety. Such a critical part of it. Then the last thing,
because that's not the thing we think of when they say go AA.
Right.
What AA seemed to me like the most if I could list things that were boring and low life and people that are just not the kind of people I want to hang out, AA would be at the top of that list.
Exactly.
And these are the folks that I have the most fun with. It's a bunch of rebels, wild ass people, but who are also choosing to do the things that create a good life. While having a blast. That's true. That's what the club is.
Yeah. So true. So true. It's not your death sentence. It's your life. It's life renewal. You're going to get more fun if you're sober and doing the deal than you ever thought you were having. I ever thought I was having fun before.
And it's the disease itself that tells me the opposite of that, because the disease thinks it's helping me.
Yeah.
The disease thinks, come on, hey, I'm your solution. You know that.
Exactly.
Come to this party.
Exactly. And so then I finished my 6 months, and guess what? I got to go to jail. And I recommend that for a lot of people. I've had sponsees that say, man, you need to go in prison to learn gratitude. And for me, it was a Mayberry RFD jail, if you remember that little show. 2 cells, basically 2 cells. And we were on work release, and food was brought in from the local restaurants because it didn't have a kitchen. But it still was me losing my freedom. And it was supposed to be a year sentence. I get there, and some of the guys who were arrested at the same raid or same, whatever you call it, pickup, when they picked us all up, they're like, George, you went to that rehab and did all that stuff, and we're getting out. And I'm like, that's all right. This is the way things work, man. I'm glad I did. And after about 6 weeks, the people that were fighting for me, they got them where something happened, a miracle, but they let me out early because of all the goodwill that I've created in my recovery. And the day I got out, I had choice to go party in New Orleans at Bourbon Street with some of my old buddies, or go back to the Sober Living Center. They were going to do a speaking engagement at the university for some high school students. And I went speak that night. And just another way, that's the other good thing I recommend. Early in sobriety, go tell your story to kids, speak, because if you speak, it ensures your sobriety, because you don't want to be speaking about how great life is sober and then you go out and use. Right. So those were the kind of tools that helped me grow in my sobriety.
Right. And it's the only, they found out back in the 30s that there's really only one thing that addresses this incredibly cunning, baffling, and powerful disease. But for thousands of years, people have been trying to come up with something.
Yeah.
And they found back in the 30s, there's only one thing. And that's another alcoholic.
Yeah.
And that's why, we don't tell our stories to tell war stories because it's fun to do it. We do it to save lives. Because when even listening to your story right now, it's like, oh shit, me too, brother, me too.
Yeah. It gives you inspiration. And that's what step 12 is, to bring you back to step 1 and help someone else. So I get out, I'm in there, I'm hanging out, I got a job, I get out of jail, I'm so excited. And then they hire me as a tech, working 11 o'clock at night to 8 a.m. And then every other weekend, I'm there all weekend and in this program. And basically the way it was is that I would work with the clients, and then the counselors would come in and relieve me. And then the clients would go to sleep at night, and I'd sleep on a sofa bed downstairs. And then wake up before they woke up to go on during the day. And, I never thought I would ever become a drug and alcohol counselor, but actually during my sober living stay, they called me in the office actually one day and said, "Hey, we want you to read this book on becoming a counselor." And I'm like, "What? You guys got to be crazy. I'm 19 years old." I go back upstairs and tell the guys in the program, I said, "Man, they're really hard up for help. They want me to think about becoming a counselor." And they said, "You have a way that you confront people where they don't get defensive." And I didn't know that at the time, but they thought that. And so I think when seeds are dropped, I didn't know. I thought I was going to be a business guy, right? Look at the kind of cars these guys drive. I don't want to be a counselor. But next thing you know, I'm working, and then they hire me as a tech. And then when I'm as tech, one of the counselors comes in, new counselors, and me and the guy that's on the chair, we apply for Hazelden's counselor training program. The same guy that stood on the chair with me, and he ended up going to Hazelden. I actually came to Houston, and that's how I got to Houston. The guy who was hired knew about a lady starting a counselor training program in Houston in 1983. And I had like 2.5 years sober and came to get trained to be back then it was called a CADAC,
right?
Certified Alcoholism and Drug Abuse Counselor. Now it's called a Licensed Chemical Dependency Counselor. And I came for this training, and part of the training is you went to rehab again as a patient, even though they wanted to make sure your issues were clear enough to become a counselor. Yep. So I did that in Tulsa, and then 5 months here in Houston, and then 6 months in Denton, Texas. And, my first client was this lady, bless her soul, Sandra. She was married 3 times. She was in her 30s, realized she was gay, had totally beach blonde hair that she dyed, and worked at Sally's Beauty Supply. That was my first client. And I think, as far as I know, I think she's still sober, but she had got a 30-day chip, and I had to, because I was in training, I slept at the end of the women's hallway at this beautiful treatment facility. I'm a young 20-something-year-old kid. And so they let me live in that facility, and they were never supposed to come to my wing or to my area. And she had got her 30-day chip, and I guess I was in my room, and she came banging on that door. She said, "I can't believe I'm your first client, and you wouldn't there to see me get my 30-day chip." I'm like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Well, this is the beauty of the gratitude I have as being a counselor. She ended up going to a halfway house in Waco and becoming an LCDC. And I've lost track of her, but that's like a grand slam for a counselor. Yeah, isn't it nice, Brittany, when you see that?
I love it.
Yeah. So when you treat someone, they go on to help someone out, go on in the profession, because our profession is getting older. And so we need newer blood. And so I love that, like Brittany, you're involved, and Nicole's involved. You're younger than Dr. Bob and I, that we're getting older. And as we age out, we need good people to keep this industry going and this business going.
Yeah, the ripple being open and real like that. And that's how you are, George. I've been around you for many years. You're so humble. Those folks saw it when you were 19 years old. There's something about you that's approachable, right? We want to be what is that thing we say? We want to be the best copy of the big book we can be.
Yes. Absolutely.
And actually, we're going to talk about it more on the next episode. We're going to be on the 12th step.
Oh,
and
nice.
The poetry in that book is so beautiful. I used to think it was just a bunch of archaic shit. It's like, and I've come to see that it's just poetic, and it transcends generations. Brittany, do you know what I'm talking about here? I mean, or does it just seem like some old guys wrote that shit?
No, I can understand what you're saying. Definitely.
Yeah.
So can I just interrupt here for just a second? Do you feel like you're sort of at the end of today's today's version of George's story?
Yeah. No, I go as long as you want, but yeah, no.
Right. It's that's when you get to be our age. It's like the story. You just stop. You have to stop at some point.
Yeah. No, but I mean, I could recap the future. So basically,
Yeah.
I become a counselor. The right steps about bankrupt. They give me 25% of the right step to help turn it around. I ended up turning it around. It was basically nothing, and it grew because of great people. I sold it in 2012. I had a 4.5-year non-compete, and so I started Positive Recovery. A lot of the great people that had the right step. Julie Denofa's been my right hand she's been with me like 14 years. She's the president, and we're moving back up to your area, back in Spicewood. I was the landlord. They moved out. The people I sold to, they had Promises Austin. They moved it to Wimberley, and we're going to call it Positive Recovery Hill Country. Awesome. And it's going to be in network, which before it used to be out of network. And if you don't understand that, it's basically your insurance contracts with us, so you have less copay.
Yeah.
And so I'm super grateful for the opportunity to get sober, just be alive. I didn't think I'd live past 21. And, my kids have never seen me using. I've been blessed with great careers. I've seen a lot of people get well. I've seen people die from this disease, but I want to keep fighting it and keep doing all I can to make a difference. And I love recovery, and I love the 12 steps. So I look forward to the next podcast.
Yeah. Thank you, brother. Are you playing basketball? Is your back letting you play basketball these days?
Yeah, I've been playing my whole life, basketball and golf.
Wow,
yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, in fact, the pandemic, I hadn't been playing, and then I played last Wednesday for the first time, and it was so much fun to get back out there.
Yeah, man. Yep, those are my two sports too. In fact, I tried to move this podcast back a little bit so I could get 18 in today, but George wouldn't budge. He wouldn't budge. If I'd have told you it was golf, you might have given me a little.
Yeah, I might have cut you some slack.
I wanted to ask you, Brittany, so I hope it's okay to just out the fact that you went to treatment at the Right Step in the old days when George was kind of had his golden hand on it.
Oh, yeah.
And now that you're meeting George, I don't think you met him. Did you have an experience of some of the things that he just told at that in your treatment experience?
Yes, absolutely. I was one who started, and I'm sorry, you're probably going to hear my dog whining at me. So, I was one who started pretty early, like at 14, and then went to treatment my first time at 16. Had parents that, wanted me to stay in treatment essentially until I got better. And I think that, I met a lot of really wonderful people along the way. I went to La Hacienda and I went to the Right Step, and I never forgot anything that they taught me there. Right. Which is, I hear parents all the time say like, well, like, what if he's not ready? And, the truth is that we plant seeds. Mm-hmm. And so I had some wonderful seeds planted. And so when I was, finally ready at 22, I had actually gone back to the Right Step for a little bit of time. And it was just really a combination of, because I do think that good treatment matters. A lot of people say you can get sober wherever, but I think good treatment really, really matters. And it was a combination of that, of, the right people being in my path, and then just getting to a place inside where I was finally willing to accept what they showed me. So I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it does. It does. It's the kind of treatment that all of us are involved with. It just, some people might hear this and say, oh, there they go with that cult, the 12-step cult, right? Or whatever it is. But it's not, It's not really. It's the only thing that works. And it's not, there's no cult involved. It's really a doorway for addicts, alcoholics, people who are stuck in the cycle of doing that same stuff over and over and can't get out of it. We need a spiritual, I'm sorry to use the word, a spiritual transformation. It's what it takes. And it's so mysterious. There is no clinical intervention to make that happen. Let me say that again. There's no clinical intervention. In other words, there's no diagnosis, pill, trying to change your mind, just think differently, some behavioral change, some make your some kind of Skinner behavioral intervention that's going to do it. No, it has to be a sustained. It has to be a sustained situation where we can let go, where the addict can take a back seat just long enough to see this bigger picture, right?
Yeah.
And spiritual intervention, you can call it, but the 12 steps done in the right way. And people can get sober without treatment.
Yeah.
I don't want to make this a big promo for spending a fortune on treatment. But if you're going to go spend money on treatment, make sure that it's a 12-step based program, or, I don't know. Some people might get sober by, doing yoga. I mean, yoga's good.
Well, what I love about Brittany's story is that Brittany, I'm so grateful. It brought me back to when we first looked at that property. It used to be executive cabins, and to know now that people go there because they're ready. I mean, treatment to me is like a container that not everybody may be ready, but you're giving them as much as you can, and you hopefully go getting them into place of readiness. Yeah. And the last time you obviously were ready. And so I just love that those grounds were used for a good purpose. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
None of us get it.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
So you are, it's going to be Positive Recovery, Hill Country.
Yeah.
But the Right Step, Wimberley, is still separate.
Yeah, still operate. I'm the landlord, so I hope they keep paying rent. Yeah, and they moved. Yeah. And they had Promises Austin, which is where we're moving into, and Spicewood is actually moved to Wimberley, because Wimberley was like 3 different properties. And so it's all on one property. So they still have Promises Austin and Right Step Hill Country.
Right. And all of these places that these guys are referring to, anybody listening, are 12-step based programs. And you're going to get some really good evidence-based clinical work to heal the trauma, which is also necessary.
They're good people, and they're really good people, and it's a beautiful facility. And then they gave me back the one in Spicewood, so we're finishing the renovation now, updating it, and then we're going to open hopefully in December.
And to just kind of put a button on this, the ripples, George, of your recovery. You're looking at, if you look on the screen, you're going to see some of it right there. And maybe Brittany didn't just the choirs maybe didn't start singing at the Right Step because she had already had some of the solution in her spirit, right? But I'm just saying our work ripples out in ways that we don't even know. And relapse is just for anybody out there that's doing the relapse dance. We don't lose our sobriety that we had when we relapse, right? Yeah. It's still there. I agree with that. All we got to do is just keep coming back. That's what we say, right? It's cliche, but that's what.
And I'm sorry, Bob. There's one thing that I want to say, because I was just thinking about, the people that we've lost, especially since the pandemic started. There's been a couple who have actually worked in the recovery field in Austin and on the business development side. And I think that somewhere we've gotten, I don't know who created this, but there's some culture in AA that, like, if you relapse, it's so shameful. And so when they relapse, they think, well, I've done this, I might as well do it all. Yep. And I think that if we could create, like you were saying, like more of a culture of, like, if you have a slip, like, you can come back. Like there's never, you can. So I think that it's that shame that keeps people from coming back and ultimately dying.
We don't shoot our wounded. We want to help them. Nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes.
Absolutely.
Well, if you listen to George's story, that proves it.
Yeah, exactly. Anybody can. If I can do it, anybody can do it.
You can come back from anything.
Absolutely.
Okay, you guys. Thanks so much for such a fun time together. Listen to George's story, man. You're such a good dude. Thank you for all.
Thanks, George. That was awesome.
Glad to share it. I wish I could have gotten more solution. We have to do part 2.
Yeah. Why don't you both say again who you are, what you're up to in the world, and how people can reach you?
Okay, Brittany.
Okay. My name is Brittany Bass, and I am business development for the Last Resort Recovery Center, residential treatment facility for men only, focusing on trauma resolution as it pertains to men. I can be reached via email at Brittany, Brittany B at lastresortrecovery.com.
Nice. And by the way, let's point at Braveheart for just a second. The Braveheart experience is their trauma resolution program. All of the men that go there go through this powerful program that's very similar to what George and I did many years ago, called the Mankind Project and the New Warrior Training Adventure. It's community-based trauma resolution. And Brittany would love to tell you all about it if you call the Last Resort.
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. Way to go. I'm George Joseph. I'm the CEO of Positive Recovery, and you can reach me at CEO@georgejoseph.com. CEO@georgejoseph.com. Thank you, Dr. Bob and Brittany. Sorry, guys, throwing grass outside.
Nice. That's believe me, anybody that's been doing Zoom these last few months is just like part of the deal. Lawnmowers, blowers, dogs. It's part of the gig. Okay, and so Nicole, are you still there? If you have to be awake for this one, this was a fun one.
Yeah.
There you are. Will you say a little bit about how people can reach us?
Yeah, absolutely. If you would like more information about our programs at Deep Waters or just about this podcast, you can reach us at deepwatersrecovery.com. Our direct number is 512-677-7847. And you can also reach me at admin@deepwatersrecovery.com. That's ADMIN@deepwatersrecovery.com.
Nice. And please like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff to keep the community of Deep Waters growing. We're focused on helping people. We're going to refer you to these guys to do if you really need that work. For the letting go of the dependency. We're kind of specialists on healing trauma and also launching folks into that juicy life. You'll be playing basketball with George Joseph if you do this program. No,
that'd be great.
So we're so glad you all joined us. Thanks, George, Brittany, Nicole, and thanks for all of you that are listening or watching on YouTube for being here. You're in the deep waters now.